So it's 6:31, May 14th, our Cherry Creek Tobiano Fire Protection Service meeting. I'm going to share my screen and have that going because we'll have a PowerPoint presentation that we go through on the staff side. So I'm just going to share the screen right now and we'll still be able to see the presenters. Can I just check, Director Grenier, do you see the fire protection referendum on your screen? That
Beautiful.
opening
Thank
slide?
you.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, Mike, so I'll throw it over to you if you wanted to do an
All right.
introduction.
Okay. And have we got everybody linked in now? Is it all the participants in? The
Yes.
public participants? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Good evening. As Colton has said, this is a public information meeting, May 14th, 2025, regarding the proposed Cherry Creek Tobiano Fire Protection Service. Tonight's public meeting is being held online and will be recorded for playback for those that are unable to attend tonight. Second public meeting, an in-person public meeting, will be held tomorrow evening at the Cherry Creek Ranch. For those of you who have further questions or whom just can't get enough on this topic. I'd like to make a few introductions for this meeting. My name is Michael Grenier. I'm the TNRD Area J Director, one of 27 directors on the TNRD board. I've been a resident of Cherry Creek for since January 1996, so almost 30 years. And I reside along the Trans-Canada Highway near the intersection with Gardy Road. For those that have been in the area a while, it's the location of the smaller irrigation pivot. Joining us tonight from the TNRD is Colton Davies, who is our communication manager, whom will be facilitating this meeting online. Jamie Vieira, who is our general manager of operations. Jason Tomlin, manager of fire protection services. Marnie Jeremiah, corporate officer. Daryl Friesen, the Tobiano fire chief. Scott Hildebrand, our chief administrative officer. Janice Winger, our fire training coordinator. And we have an invited guest, Jason Wallace of the Insurance Brokers Association of BC. This evening's meeting, we will start with a staff summary of the proposed fire protection service, addressing the who, what, where, when, why, how of the process, and the meeting will be then open up to your questions. This meeting is about providing you and your neighbors with accurate information about the proposed fire protection service. And while there may be differing opinions on the matter, I'm sure everyone will appreciate hearing the specifics of the proposal and the process and having your questions answered. When the question period comes up, I'd appreciate if you could keep your language civil and clearly state your name at the outset of your question. And with that, I'm going to hand over the meeting to Colton to facilitate tonight's meeting. Colton.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate your opening remarks here. So just before we get going, staff, just for everyone's expectations, staff will be presenting for probably 30 to 40 minutes. We'll try not to go much longer than that. And then, it'll be fairly high level, and we can get as granular as we need with questions. Basically, if we dug way into the weeds on everything, we'd probably be past 2 hours. So we're going to keep it high level and hopefully 30 to 40 minutes. And I'll go over how to ask a question on Zoom right before we get to that part of the meeting. So for the courtesy of everyone who's in this meeting, we'll make sure that the conversation stays respectful at all times and everyone feels welcomed and encouraged to ask questions, as they should. As Mike mentioned, the purpose of the meeting is to share information and clarity on the proposed service, the referendum, and all of the background. So we appreciate everyone doing their part for keeping the meeting respectful and informative. So with that, I think, Jamie, if you wanted to start with the presentation.
Thanks, Golden, and thank you, Director Grenier. So happy to be here, and as Colton and Director Grenier said, our intent today is to get all the information out so everyone could make an informed decision. This is about an opportunity for residents of the area to decide whether this is a service they want in the future. So the agenda today is I'll just cover an overview and then I'll hand it over to Chief Daryl and Jason to speak more specifically about fire department operations, and then happy to have Jason Walls here to talk specifically about home insurance and some context around that, as I know there's a lot of questions. And then I'll do a bit of a deep dive into, and I know there's a lot of questions around the financials and the tax implications of the proposed service. And then Marnie, our corporate officer, will talk about the referendum process, and then we'll talk about what happens after that. Go to the next slide. So to make sure we're all on the same level to start off this discussion, the service that's being proposed, which is the factor of the referendum that's been scheduled for June 21st, is the creation of a new fire protection service area that includes all the properties shaded both in blue and in beige in this map here. So the existing community of the Tobiano Fire Protection Area, plus all of the Cherry Creek properties up to the New Gold Mine border. So it's a creation of a new service, as well as approval of borrowing for the capital cost to build a new hall and purchase new equipment and apparatus. It will be primarily funded through property taxes. I'll talk about that in more detail later on. And that public assent is required. So regional districts are structured a little bit different than municipalities, that we must have the public approve any new service, as well as any borrowing that needs to be approved. So even if there wasn't borrowing involved in this, it would still be up to the residents of whether they would want a new service that would be added to their property taxes. So I'm going to spend a bit of time on this slide just to walk through how we got to where we are today. I know this timeline is pretty long. It goes back to 2018, but it really does tell the story, and I think fill in the blanks for many people, even internally here on the staff side, was helpful to understand all the steps in the process. So this goes back to, in 2018, there was a referendum specifically for Tobiano residents where they approved that the TNRD took over administration of their fire department. Prior to that, it was an independent society-based fire department that was not administered by the TNRD. At that same time, during that referendum, the residents of Tobiano also approved through the referendum the borrowing of a maximum of $1 million to build a fire hall. The TNRD, so that referendum was approved by the public in 2019. It formally then was transferred over, and all the assets transferred over to the TNRD. So as we work through kind of considering fire hall design, location, where that would be within Tobiano, for a number of reasons, the hall construction was delayed. Definitely a factor in that was the pandemic and the cost increases, but we were also running into challenges with the specific location with where it would be held in or constructed in Tobiano. The other challenges that we ran into beginning in 2020 with the cost inflation was the fact that $1 million was not adequate to build a hall. So while we were looking at that, we're trying to decide best location, the design of the hall. But shortly at the same time, what was happening was in 2021, there was the Tremont Creek wildfire, which I'm sure everyone remembers, that was directly threatening the whole Cherry Creek area. And some may remember there was a bit of an impromptu community meeting held in a field in Cherry Creek in 2021. And the general discussion at that meeting was, what can we do in Cherry Creek to improve fire protection? I know there was discussion about the fire brigade model compared to just fire smarting, and right up to, could we create an actual fire department? So that discussion led into the area director at the time coming to the TNRD board and getting approval to spend money on a feasibility study to look at expanding fire protection from Tobiano to include all the properties in Cherry Creek. That study was commissioned early in 2022 and was completed in spring of 2022. Shortly after that, we had a community meeting in Cherry Creek to present the findings of that study. And at the same time, or immediately following the meeting, there was a community survey specifically for the residents of Cherry Creek, with the main question being, should the TNRD pursue this further, and should there be a formal referendum held? Just for clarity, that survey was just a non-binding survey to get input of, is this something worthwhile pursuing, to give the board some direction on what the community sense was. Now, following that community meeting and feasibility study, we ran into some challenges on the legislative side with the province, because the proposed model was to have two different fire protection areas funding a single fire department, one in Cherry Creek, one in Tobiano. The province did not approve that model, so we had to go back to the drawing board a bit and work with the province around what model would be acceptable for what we were trying. What was being proposed was a single fire department to service all of Tobiano and Cherry Creek. Also in 2022, there was a new board of directors, and that's when Director Grenier was elected, as well as many other many other directors were new to our board. So as we worked through the process with the province to decide on a model, we were also trying to secure land for a fire hall. We would not move forward with a referendum process until we had land secured. That process took, to be honest, it took longer than we expected. We had a few deals that didn't go through, but I'm happy to report at the end or last fall, we secured a land agreement that if the service was established, that we had land in the area identified in the feasibility study that could be used for the fire hall. So with that, we brought this back to the TNRD board in 2025, and they approved carrying out this process that we're in right now, which is the referendum scheduled for June 21st. So sorry for the long-winded story there, but I think it's important to understand that this process started way back in, well, I guess back in 2021 with the meeting about the Tremont Creek fire, and we've been working through a process to give all the residents in the area the opportunity to decide whether they wanted an expanded fire protection service. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jason and Chief Darrell to speak more specifically about fire department operations. Oh, Jason, you're on mute still here.
All right, sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. We'll do a high-level overview of the fire department operations. And just so everyone's aware, the TNRD has 16 fire service areas that we operate through, and 7 of those are contract areas that an example would be Whitecroft, a small community below Sun Peaks, where there's an established municipal fire department. We contract with that department to provide fire protection to the small community in the regional district. So we have 7 of those relationships, and then the other 9 services we manage directly through our own fire departments and firefighters. And within those 9 fire services, we have just over 200 firefighters that are directly related to the TNRD managed fire departments. We've, from a lens of what the fire departments do, obviously we have in front there the structured fire suppression, landscape fires, which this time of year, I'm sure everyone's aware, there's always a uptick in landscape fires between snow melt and green up. So that's the business of the day right now in the regional district. Really, when people are starting to clean up their yards for summer. Of course, wildfire, structural protection, medical first responder, and road rescue are really the high-level services that the fire departments provide in their fire service areas. This picture is obviously the Loon Lake Fire Department that we recently completed in 2023. for operations at Loon Lake. Their initial one was destroyed in the 2017 wildfires, and so this is the replacement hull for that. It's a TNRD service. It's a 3-bay. It looks like a 2-bay hull, but there is a 3rd bay on the back left. And it's well equipped to support the fire service area of Loon Lake. Much like this expanded service that we're looking at in the Cherry Creek area, the fire hall that's proposed there would be similar in nature, 3-bay, washroom, showers, gear room, chief's office, compressor room, underground water tanks. Of course, we'll get into that with a little bit more detail and a few more slides. And overall to capture all the functions of a standard fire department. Next slide, please. On this one, I'll turn the equipment piece over to the chief to speak to the Tobiano specific equipment.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having me out tonight. Yeah, so as you can see in the 2 pictures, those are the top picture there is our fire engine that we currently are operating out of Tobiano right now. That truck holds about 1,000 gallons of water, and we've got various size hoses for fire attack and transporting water, hard suction hoses to pull water out of the lake if we need. Yeah, just got your basic tools, right from the nozzles to axes to shovels and all kinds of stuff on there for any fire situation we could get into. And then new to us as of just this week is that F550, which is going to be our rescue truck for doing highway runs, and also going to be set up with some forestry equipment. So we'll be using that for some bushfires if that stumbles across our plate. We will be setting that truck up fully for our medical services that we'll be offering, and we'll be planning to put that next item there, the Tahatsu fire pump. We're talking about putting that into the back of the truck so we can have water at any of our auto rescues that we have to do on the highway in case something sparks up on us unexpectedly. We also have a so that Tahatsu pump, so let's go back to that. It's a 30 horsepower pump, easily movable. We can take it in the back of a pickup. A couple guys can carry that around. Moves a lot of water, very adaptable to any situation that we might need it for. We also have a fire deck. We don't have pictures of that, but it's a 250-gallon tank with a 5 horsepower Honda pump on it. So we can be using that also for some brush fires, and that'll just go in the back of somebody's pickup truck if we need to use that. We've got, the Hearst spreader and cutter. We received that a couple weeks ago from the Vavenby Fire Department. We will be using that primarily for auto extrication. Last weekend we were able to put them to use as we did a big training day out with a couple other fire departments in the Blackpool area. So we're pretty excited to have those on board that rescue truck going forwards. As far as our equipment, that's kind of a quick overview. Obviously, if this referendum goes through, we'll be having to look at a tender or a tanker, which would carry up to 2,000 gallons of water, and another fire engine to service the new service area. So I think that's it for the equipment on a quick overview. So I'll keep talking about the water supply. So in Tobiano, we're very fortunate to have ample amount of water. We have hydrants all over the place that we can tie into. And of course, we have access right down to Kamloops Lake where we can do hard suction if we need. So Tobiano's well set up with that. With Cherry Creek, obviously a little bit more challenging, but not to say we can't service the area with what you can see there's a water tender or a tanker. That would be our first acquisition we would make if this goes through. And then storage tanks, underground, above ground. I was out last week in Blackpool, and that's how they've got a bunch of tanks above ground, and so we would be able to suck water out of those. And obviously we would have specific locations throughout the service area where those would get put. Dry hydrants and open water sources. There are some ponds that we would look at putting some dry hydrants in potentially. Obviously, we would have to get permission and work with homeowners on gaining access to some of those areas. We would address all that. If this referendum goes through, we would start exploring all those options and try to make that all work. And yeah, so the New Gold partnership, I'm going to let Jason talk on that for a minute, and that should be it.
Great, thanks, Chief. I think the other piece I'll add, just for everyone's reference, out of our 9 fire services that we manage, the non-hydrant system is the norm for us. We don't have hydrants in really, with the exception of Tobiano and Pritchard in one small area. We pull water for fire suppression successfully in all the other areas with what's laid out in what the chief just explained with the water storage in different strategies. When it comes to New Gold, again, Chief Friesen and I met with the chief of New Gold recently to see what resources they have and what relationship we could form with them operationally if this goes forward, which definitely they have ample water on site. They have dedicated resource equipment, a number of firefighters on the roster. We didn't really go down into any official, obviously, detail at this point, a little early for that, but definitely there seems to be a willingness to look at helping us out if this goes forward. I think on the next slide we have, it's actually just with the dry hydrants, as I mentioned, that this is our norm for most of our areas. And we do get a lot of questions from the public about what dry hydrants are, what they look like, how do we operate them. So we did create a bit of a YouTube video with some very skilled staff here at the TNRD around what they look like and how they're utilized with our fire department. So I think if Colton, you want to play that would be great.
No, we're not hearing it, Colton. I think we're still not getting audio, Colton.
Can you hear it now?
Oh, there, I just heard a blip of it. There you go. Turn that up and start her from the beginning. I think that should work.
You could hear it there? Sorry, I could start from the beginning.
Yeah, I could hear it there.
Sorry about that. I guess I have to have my mic on for that to work.
Oh, nope, still not hearing it. Yeah, turn it up.
The admin chief for Littleport Fire. Dry hydrants are utilized by the fire service in in areas where we don't have existing municipal fire hydrants or water systems. Dry hydrants can be put into rivers or static water sources where we can actually hook onto a end of the pipe and pump from there, either from a truck or from a pump, providing water, whether it be water shuttles or fire suppression or supply lines with a pump to a fire itself. We also have large capacity water storage tanks, both 10,000 gallon and 6,000 gallon tanks, strategically placed within the fire protection area. And by doing this in high density residential areas or high risk areas, a water source that's readily available for our crews to reload tenders and trucks from, allowing them to be back on scene, providing water to the fire as needed. This also serves to reduce code 3 driving time, whereby our trucks are not in traffic any longer than they absolutely have to be in an emergency situation. It reduces our risk for motor vehicle collisions or involvement with the public where we don't need them. In places where people have structures and feel that a fire protection service wouldn't benefit them, one has to ask themselves, what price do you put on safety? Where we can come in and put water on a fire quickly, knock it down, save a portion of a structure or your valuables, that's priceless. A fire doubles in size every minute. Once we get a call, our average response time as a volunteer haul from time of dispatch to the time of a truck leaving the apron is 8 minutes. Once we arrive on scene, initial attack starts. Having the availability of water tenders that can go to either dry hydrants or to the water storage tanks means we can put more water on the fire in a quicker period of time, enabling us to reduce the loss, save lives, and stabilize the situation.
Okay, sorry for the quiet video there.
All right, so with that, I think we all recognize that the Cherry Creek is not the North Thompson River, so the volumes are quite different there. But this map is a very, I guess, high-level representation of what things could look like. Obviously, with the hydrant system in Tobiano, the potential partnership in New Gold on your far right, the underground tanks at the proposed Cherry Creek Fire Station, and then we have those three kind of in between. Very, again, peripheral. We understand there is a potential good water source at the intersection of Buckhorn and Beaton, but these are all just kind of place markers, if you will, just to give everyone the idea that we strategically look at these locations and then design and build the infrastructure so we can basically extract fire suppression water as needed. I think I have that piece. Chief, do you want to beat this one up a bit?
Yeah, so just kind of through the way we get dispatched, our calls all go through the Kamloops Fire Rescue Service. We all carry pagers on our hips. A lot of people ask why we have them. Well, that's we're not living in the firehouse, so we respond from wherever we're at. We are on call 24/7, 365 days a year. Never know when the emergencies come. And right at this moment in-house, we are working on putting together our duty rosters, so we will be able to always be able to offer a full service with a full crew in any truck, whether it's for a medical or road rescue or a fire. So yeah, I mean, we're here for everybody that we cover, and you never know when the next call's coming. So. And that's all I got on the dispatch end of things. And Jason's going to talk a little bit about the incident response stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So with any of our fire service areas, obviously there's a systematic approach on how we deliver the fire service, and every service is different. They all come with their unique challenges. And so once a service is established, we identify you know, the challenging properties and do the hazard risk vulnerability assessment. And then we understand what we have to do on certain challenging properties, and then we create fire pre-plans. So if there is a call out to a challenging property, the fire department already knows what they need to do to deploy an effective response to that call. As far as resource coordination, that is ongoing with the tri-services, the police, the ambulance, other stakeholders. This would be a good piece for New Gold would fit into here. You know, we have Savanaw down the road. That could be another relationship formed potentially. And then the ongoing public education and risk reduction piece, which all our fire departments always work closely with them and try to help the public just understand how to better protect themselves and their properties.
Yeah, so a little bit on the training end of things. So we fall under the same criteria as any full-time career department, KFR or Vancouver Fire Department or whatever. We are trained to the same level as those guys. WCB also, you know, we have to follow WCB rules. It's the same across the board. All of our training comes from the National Fire Protection Association. So any trainings that we do, we have job performance reviews, written exams, practical examinations, and we have to submit all that paperwork for all of our firefighters to be signed off on any specific job. In the last few months, our entire department, for the most part, was able to go through the first responder program. So everybody's been signed off by the Emergency Medical Assistance Licensing Board. So that's a service that up until now we have not been able to provide to just to Tobiano alone. So hopefully in the next month or two, that's something that we'll be able to help out with. And then also, as recent as last weekend, this road rescue, we were able to get a decent amount of guys out to get signed off on all the road rescue and work with the tools and just get familiar with pulling cars apart, I guess, for the most part is an easy way to say it. So yeah, another service that we're going to be able to offer to the new service area if it all goes through. So. Yeah, and then just with the recruitment, we're open to anybody who's willing to come out and help out in your communities. We're by no means at max capacity with our members, so we're always we're encouraging people moving into the Tobiano or Cherry Creek area to come try it out, see if it's something you guys would like to do. And yeah, I mean, it's a paid position. Being a firefighter here at Tobiano currently, that's paid per call. And yeah, it's just we have a great group of guys and girls, and yeah, we'd encourage anybody if there's any interest to give us a call or come out on a Wednesday night at a training practice and just kind of see what we're all about.
Okay, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Jason, and thank you, Jamie, so far. Now we're getting into the home insurance part of it. We're probably 2/3, 3/4 of the way past our whole presentation here. And this is where I think we bring in Jason Wallace from the Insurance Brokers Association of BC, if I have that right. Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Colton. You did get it right, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. As Colton mentioned, I'm Jason Wallace. I am with the Insurance Brokers Association of BC, which is an association of all of the insurance brokers across British Columbia who advocate for the consuming public at large. That's a volunteer position I hold on behalf of the Central and Southern British Columbia regions. I am a full-time insurance broker professionally day to day. So this is what I do. Whenever I speak in front of a group like this, I always worry that I'm going to put people to sleep because it's not always the most exciting topic and not always everybody's favorite. But I wanted to just spend a couple of moments here before we really get into talking about fire protection and how insurance companies view that, and just kind of give everybody a really, really general big picture look at what's been happening in what we call catastrophic or large losses across British Columbia and Canada. Because when I get to the end of this, you'll see how we weave that all together, and it'll help, I think, clarify the picture a little bit. So unfortunately, we are in a period right now where British Columbians and Canadians have never seen more insurance-related loss caused by natural disaster or catastrophic situations. So what they mean by that is wildfire, wind-related losses, flooding, and not so much in this part of the world, but throughout the prairies, hail damage. Unfortunately, 2024 was the highest payout of claims in the history of Canada in terms of weather-related losses. And if that was the only year in recent memory where we were setting records, I wouldn't be as concerned about it as I am. Unfortunately, over the last 10 years, we have set that record 7 times nationally. So for whatever reason it is, we're seeing more and more things like wildfire, flood, bad windstorms, bad hailstorms that are causing damage to people's homes, their cars, their businesses. I've left a few examples up there. I don't need to remind anybody of any of them. Some of them are a little close to home for all of us. I should have mentioned at the top, I'm a resident of Kamloops. My family and I have lived here for 15 years. This is what we call home. So, the area that you folks live in, we consider it home as well. So, so that's kind of the big picture. As money is being spent to replace infrastructure from claims or homes or people's businesses or their automobiles, unfortunately, that puts upward pressure on insurance premiums. If more money is going out, insurers can't continue spending $1.05 or $1.10 for every dollar they bring in premium. So unfortunately, that has been putting some upward pressure on insurance premiums. I'm sure everybody on the call has felt that. I know I certainly have. Regardless of who I work for, my renewal's gone up every year for the last bunch of years as well. And because of the just overall payouts that are happening in the industry, that's been the unfortunate trend that we're seeing. Shifting gears to a little bit more of the topic at hand. One of the things that insurance companies look at when they're setting rates or determining whether or not they even wish to provide insurance in certain regions of the province is that particular region's exposure to these natural disasters, particularly wildfire, and what level of fire protection exists within the region. Every insurance company in Canada subscribes to a program called Fire Underwriting Survey. You'll see it in there in brackets. We call it FUS in our business. FUS is a nonprofit organization, and really what they do is they grade fire protection districts and fire departments all across Canada and North America. And then they grade them on a scale of 1 to 10 behind the scenes, 1 being the highest grade of protection available, 10 being there is nothing or next to nothing. So completely remote property. If you have a fire, stand back and get safe because there's no help coming. The more fire protection apparatus and personnel and infrastructure that exists, the closer that number gets to 1. You don't see 1 or 2 very often. Those tend to be in major metropolitan areas where there are crews upon crews upon crews and very, very large budgets. So think, downtown Vancouver, downtown Calgary, Toronto, they'd be scoring on a 1, for example. You do not have to get all the way down to 1 to get more options in the insurance business. You just want to stay as far away from 10 as you can. So in a nutshell, that's how Fire Underwriting Survey works. And that is one of the key considerations that insurance companies use when they are setting rates for homeowners throughout British Columbia. So are all insurance companies the same? Certainly not, but by and large, folks, they all operate very, very similarly. They're a spread of risk where the premiums, theoretically, the premiums of the many are used to pay out the losses of the few. And that is why you hear the old adage sometimes that, why did the big fire in California cause my insurance premiums to go up here in Canada? It's because at a global scale, these dollars are all really pooled together through a bunch of different financial techniques to design to spread risk out around the globe so that we're not concentrating all of the premium and all the exposure in one part of BC or one part of Canada. Maybe I could have the next slide, Colton, if you don't mind. So talking about how premiums are calculated, and I do promise that I'm getting to the point as how this ties into fire halls. There's two things that go into how an insurance company establishes a premium for a home anywhere in the province, whether it's downtown Vancouver, here in Kamloops where I live, or in Cherry Creek, BC. They take into consideration what rate they would need to charge in order for them to be able to maintain their business as an insurance company, and that's essentially the cost per $100 of insurance coverage that they need to charge to people that are buying it. And then they have to apply that rate to the value of the property insured. So naturally, a home that would cost $500,000 to reconstruct in the event of a fire theoretically will cost less to insure than a home that costs $2 million. There's just less of it to put back. So what impacts how these premiums are set beyond those two really simple determinations of rate and value? Well, each insurance company has their own factors that they look at. They call them material risk factors for each location or each property. Long story short, folks, communities that have fire protection tend to find themselves in a better rate position. All other things remaining equal than properties that do not have any fire protection. Fire rating and fire exposure isn't the only thing that goes into these calculations. However, fire is one of the leading causes of loss, whether they're wildfire or, the unfortunate types of fires that just break out in people's homes. Kitchen fire, left the barbecue on. We've all heard these things that happen, and they happen by accident. Other things that impact premiums are the general financial health of the insurance industry and what's called the reinsurance industry. Believe it or not, insurance companies buy insurance from each other in the event that they have to pay out locally. They will buy insurance against those potential payouts from a company on the other side of the world or in a different part of the country, just so that they're all spreading the risk around a little bit. Other things that are impacting premiums are labor and material costs. Going back to the value of the property insured, if we're in a period of high inflation and things like 2x4s and roof decking and concrete cost more, you will probably pay more for your insurance, unfortunately, because the cost to rebuild your home will be considered higher than it would have been when building materials and labor materials were less expensive. And then underscore all of that with geopolitical considerations that impact the above. So as if anybody's been watching the news, obviously there's lots of things happening in the world surrounding tariffs and how international trade flows are going to work. And I'm all for the Buy Canadian, but the reality is that our supply chains are very globally linked, and with some disruption and some uncertainty in them, can do things like slow down materials availability and hinder the ability to get building materials as quickly as possible. So those are all things that are unfortunately putting right now upward pressure on insurance premiums. So whether you've had a claim or not, chances are you've seen your policy coverage or the cost of your policy coverage go up in recent years. And that is because of all these things that we've just discussed, the prevalence of more and more losses, cost of insurance premiums having to follow that to keep insurance companies in business, and then the upward pressure from things like labor materials costs and geopolitical impacts and things like that. So what does this all mean for you folks in Cherry Creek that are looking to decide if you're wanting to have a fire hall in your community? Now, I'm not in the position, folks, where I can say explicitly that, this many dollars and this many cents is how much an insurance premium will go up or down or stay the same with the existence of a fire hall. What I can tell you is that having more protection from a fire hall and more services like that, it's only going to make your insurance, your ability to buy insurance easier. I can't say that it's going to make premiums go backwards, but they will keep them from going up as fast as they might have in the absence of a fire hall. They will also potentially bring more insurance companies into a region because there are, I think, something to the effect of 141 licensed insurance providers in British Columbia. And I don't mean brokers or agents, but actual financial companies who will provide insurance to British Columbians. Not all 141 of those do business in every postal code of this province. They pick and choose the ones they want to do business in. Communities that have fire halls and fire services along the lines of what Chief Reason has described and Jason Tomlin will likely find that there's more availability, more choice, more options, and that typically is a good thing for the consumer as well. So I certainly happy to take some questions at the end, but in a very, very quick snapshot, that is where, or that is how the impact of a fire hall in your community can impact your ability to buy insurance, and what that might look like for you going forward. Thanks, Colton.
Okay, thank you for your input, Jason, and for being here and sharing this. A couple more sections, and next one, financials and tax implications, and I think Jamie's speaking to that.
Yeah, thanks, Colton. So just as I jump into this, this financial implication, the same information is available on our website and the information mail out that should have gone out to all properties. So I'll just cover it quickly here, but happy to get into questions afterwards as well. So to break it down, we have two big annual costs for operating a fire department. So we have our annual operating costs that are everything from our fire hall vehicle maintenance, putting gas in the truck, equipment replacement, repairs, fuel, utility costs, training costs, firefighter remuneration payment. All of those things contribute to our annual budget. So I should clarify here on this slide, we're saying the annual operating budget is $400,000. That's our estimated annual operating budget under the proposed expanded service area that includes the Cherry Creek properties. The current annual operating budget for Tobiano, I believe, is around the $320,000 mark. So this increase is factoring in expected more calls, more firefighters, increased costs with more equipment, etc. So moving forward, all these cost implications are based on the proposed expanded service, and I'll speak to the current Tobiano tax rate in a minute here. So we got annual operating cost of $400,000. We could switch to the next slide here, Colton. So switching gears, we have capital costs. So before we talk about annual capital costs, let's talk about the total capital costs. So the upfront cost for the expanded service area is the $3 million. So of that, the breakdowns as follows: a little over $2 million for the construction of the fire hall, new fire apparatus, the fire engine and fire tender that were spoken about, as well as the water storage tanks. I will note that the equipment actually in all our fire departments typically are engines and tenders. We do shop in that used equipment market. New fire engines are in well beyond the $1 million mark, and so we find there's better value in shopping that used market, which is similar to many other small municipalities that would do the same. Want to clarify that future capital costs would be funded through contributions to reserves and or grant funds. So the intent is not to have a referendum every 10 years when we have a new capital cost. Proper management on the TNRD side will be to ensure that we're planning for replacing of equipment, expansion of halls, etc., as needed. But as typical with a new service or expanded service, there's these one-time upfront costs. I also want to stop here and clarify that I mentioned it early on in the presentation that back in 2018, Tobiano approved borrowing $1 million for the construction of a hall. That hall was never constructed, as we talked about, and that $1 million was never utilized. So keep that in mind as we move forward here. Next slide. So where's that $3 million coming from? So fortunately, we have other revenue sources. So of the $3 million, only $2.5 million needs to be borrowed as part of this referendum process. We have $400,000 in grant funding available through what's called the Canada Community Building Fund. The TNRD's policy is that funding gets allocated to electoral areas based on population, and Director Grenier has set aside $400,000 of that to go towards this fire hall construction. We also are pleased that Diverse Properties, a developer of Tobiano, has offered a $100,000 upfront contribution towards the capital cost of the fire hall. And they have also offered an additional up to $100,000, matching $100,000 based on sales of future property. So they will donate an additional $1,000 per property sold if this referendum passes. So that additional $100,000 would go into those reserve funds for future capital replacement. That's why it's not factored in here. So how the borrowing works is this goes through what the Municipal Finance Authority, which is a fancy way of saying the bank that the municipalities and regional districts use, and we essentially take out a 20-year mortgage. And instead of a monthly payment, that gets calculated into an annual payment. So based on the $2.5 million at the current interest rate through MFA, that's just shy of $200,000 per year is the annual, for lack of a better word, mortgage cost. For the entire service area. And then we'll show how that gets broken down in a minute here. So next slide. So really there's just two big annual costs that we're talking about. Annual operating costs, keeping the lights on. Second, the borrowing costs for the capital. That equals our total tax requisition. So we're looking at around $600,000 annually required. Next slide. So what people really want to know about, so how does that impact their property taxes? So the estimated tax rate is, and tax rates are based on an assessed value. So our estimated tax rate based on those numbers I just presented is 1.14 cents per thousand, or you could think of it $114 per 100,000 of assessment. So the tax rate gets approved annually through the TNRD board budget approval process. So this, just to clarify, it's not a one and done where if this referendum gets approved, then we can change the budget as we please. It needs to get approved annually through our annual budget process. The actual taxation amount is obviously based on assessed values of your property. So not all properties pay the same amount. And different property classes pay different rates. So 1.14 is based on the residential class. The majority of properties are residential in the area, but also the majority of people who are probably on this call and interested are those who own residential properties. Businesses and utilities pay a different rate. Businesses pay about 2 times the residential rate. And this is regardless of what the service is, whether it's fire protection or otherwise. Next slide. I also want to mention that you'll see in our documentation that we have actually a maximum tax requisition set at 1.3 per thousand of assessment. That is required as part of the legislative service establishment process, which means if we were ever to want to exceed the maximum tax requisition, well, we couldn't. We'd have to go back to the public and have another referendum. So logically, we'll always build in a little bit of wiggle room there if there's unforeseen circumstance in the future, allow us to increase taxes by a reasonable rate. So 1.3 is the absolute ceiling. I mention that because that 1.3 is the number that will actually be on the referendum question, not the 1.14 that we're using as our estimated rate. But the previous slides and moving forward, everything is based on our estimated 1.14. So just to give some examples of how that actually calculates. So in the entire proposed service area, the average assessment is right around $800,000. So that equates to $914 per year for the fire protection services. Just for interest sake, the average home in Tobiano is higher at 960, so they'll pay a little over $1,000. Cherry Creek average is lower, and the average Cherry Creek property would be around $650. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to kind of speak to 2 different property groups here. So if you're on this call and you're in Tobiano, you are already paying taxes for fire protection. This referendum is to approve borrowing for the new hall, because there's still not a hall in Tobiano, as well as to approve the concept of expanding the service and growing the service area. So for those in Tobiano, you are already paying 0.92 cents per thousand, or $92 per 100,000 of assessment for your current fire protection service. So the proposed service will increase your tax rate up to the $114 per 100,000 instead of the 92, and that's the increase in the borrowing costs. For Cherry Creek residents, obviously it's a different scenario where you are currently paying $0 for fire protection, and you would be paying that same 114 per thousand. But this table here that I'm showing also shows all the other TNRD fire protection areas. So the point of this is just to show that we only bring fire protection proposals forward, one, when there's interest from the residents and the public for it, and two, that the board gives us direction to pursue it, and three, that it's economically feasible. We would not be holding a referendum process if that number was $4 or $5 per thousand, because we know that just is not economically feasible for the average person. Here, what we're showing is that this falls well within the realm of reasonable in terms of our other fire protection areas and other fire protection areas outside the TNRD and within municipalities. Now, this slide is addressing new growth. Typically, we don't talk about new growth in rural fire protection areas because a lot of rural areas see little or slow growth. Unique scenario here in Cherry Creek and Tobiano, as over the past 5 years in particular, there's been massive growth, both in Cherry Creek and especially in Tobiano. So the current total assessment is it's 520 million over 648 properties. But what happens when more properties are developed and new homes and new assessments added? Well, ultimately what that means is it lowers the tax rate for everyone, because if we add 5 new homes, 10 new homes, 20 new homes, it's not going to increase the cost of providing the service at that same incremental rate. So overall, the similar or almost the same operating costs are spread across a larger tax base. So the examples I'm putting in here have to do with Tobiano in particular. So there's currently a development that just got approved that's not captured in the 2024 assessment. 94 new lots have been subdivided and created, and construction's underway in that latitude development. So this is just hypothetical right now. Let's say 5 years from now, that's all built out and there's 94 new homes assessed at $800,000 each. Well, that's going to lower the tax rate for everyone in the service area down to that 99 cents per thousand, or $99 per 100,000 from the 114. Adding to that, what if there's a new business or multiple new businesses, hotels, gas stations? Again, this is theoretical, but I know it's been discussed as an opportunity and a potential for Tobiano. So add another $20 million of assessed value under the business category. That would further reduce the tax rate down to 92 cents per thousand. Coincidentally, that's the rate that Tobiano is currently paying without having any fire hall or borrowing that's used there. I will turn it back to Colton or Marnie to speak about the referendum process.
Thanks, Jamie. Very much appreciated. And yeah, last but not least, our last part of the presentation, referendum. And Marnie, are you good to speak to this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Colton.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, everybody. So our referendum dates we have set already are the advance voting. That'll be on Wednesday, June 11th. And the voting location will be the Tobiano Presentation Center. The hours will be from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And general voting day has been scheduled for June 21st. Will be held at the Cherry Creek Ranch from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And both dates and locations are open to all eligible voters. Next slide, please. To be eligible to vote in this referendum, you need to be either a resident elector or non-resident property owner, which basically means that you need to be 18 years of age or older, a Canadian citizen, resident of BC for the last 6 months, resident within the service area, or owner of real property for at least 30 days, and not disqualified from law or by law from voting, which means that you are not eligible to vote in a British Columbia local government election if you've been convicted of an indictable offense and are in custody, or have been found guilty of an election offense. Every eligible resident does get one vote, and that is anybody who resides within that proposed service area. Non-resident property owners don't qualify as resident electors. Typically, a non-resident elector would be somebody who lives elsewhere in the province or like owns property within the service area but resides elsewhere. Let me see here. You are not eligible to vote if you are a property owner who holds title as on behalf of a corporation or like in trust or of some kind. So basically that means that there's no corporate vote that is allowed. There's only one vote that is allowed to be had on behalf of the property owner. If there are multiple property owners within this or on title, then basically you would require consent from the majority of owners on title. One eligible non-resident property owner would be registered to vote. Next slide, please. Additional ways to vote. We are providing mail ballot voting for the residents within the proposed service area. Applicants will be submitted or will be sent out or notified, excuse me. So we will be accepting mail ballot packages effective May 26th. They'll be counted on general voting day, and they do need to be returned by June 20th at 4 p.m. at the TNRD office, or we can continue to receive them on general voting day up to 8 p.m. on June 21st. If there is a mail strike, it appears that there is talks about Canada Post having a strike effective the 22nd of May. A contingency plan will be in place. We have reached out to Elections BC to determine the possible next steps, and information will be provided to all residents within the service area. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it on to Jamie.
Jamie, I think you're on mute there.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get to
Thanks. Yeah.
what
So you can go
happens.
to the next slide there, Colton.
You bet.
So just quickly want to address this as we've had a lot of questions. So what happens if the referendum does not pass? So what that means is the Tobiano Fire Protection Service will remain in place as is. Tobiano will still be without a fire hall, and public assent would still be required for borrowing to construct a fire hall, because back to the $1 million that was approved in 2018, as I said, that wasn't adequate to build a fire hall, and the approval for that borrowing has since expired anyways. So what we would do then is reassess the operational needs for Tobiano, the service area, what size of hall we need, what equipment, where's the location, what the costs are. They wouldn't necessarily be the same cost presented here, but we'd be essentially going back to the drawing board, focusing on long-term plan for Tobiano only if this referendum is determined that Cherry Creek is not approved to be included. The feasibility for future expansion into Cherry Creek would be greatly reduced because we would be building a fire hall in Tobiano, and then the distance to most of the Cherry Creek properties, it would be a lot farther. Next slide. So if the referendum does pass, what does that mean? Well, we'd be planning on having the service expansion in place by January 1st, 2026. That would be pending equipment availability, mainly having the water tender in place. We would immediately begin operational planning. So things we talked about already, water access and storage and property specific operational considerations, etc. We'd continue with firefighter recruitment and training with a specific focus on, recruiting more firefighters in the Cherry Creek area. We'd immediately begin design and procurement for a new fire hall and apparatus. with expected construction to happen later in 2026. There'd be no tax impact in your 2025 tax notice, which you may have already received. Obviously, it wouldn't be this year's tax impact. Taxation would begin in 2026. But for clarity, only operational expenses would be taxed for immediately. We do not tax for the borrowing costs until the hall would be complete. So in other words, wouldn't be paying the costs of the fire hall until there actually is a fire hall in place operating, only the operational expenses. Yeah, and that's all on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie, Marnie, Jason, Chief Friesen. And that's what we have for a presentation. So apologies, it went longer than 30-40 minutes, and now we're ready for tomorrow night, when I can safely say off the top it'll be a bit longer than that. So thanks for bearing with that and all the information we just provided. We have a couple dozen attendees on right now, and now's where we're looking for any questions from people online tuned in. Many people are probably familiar, but the raise hand function, if you have a question, go ahead and use that now if you'd like to speak and ask a question to anyone here. You could also use the chat feature, and whether you do the raise hand function or the chat, we'll just call on you in the order that they come in. And if we have a whole bunch of questions and somebody's asking a few in a row, we might just go back to you to let everyone have a chance. We should have no problem getting to everybody. And just a reminder too, again, keep this respectful at all times, and be, courteous of everyone's time as part of this meeting too, and the purpose of this meeting, talking about the proposed service and the referendum like we've been doing. So with that, I see a hand up for Greg Gordon. I've hit ask you to unmute. So Greg, go ahead and fire away.
Greg Gordon here. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Just
Greg.
wondering what the current call volume is for Tobiano Fire.
Probably, is that a question for you, Chief?
Yeah. So our call volume is pretty small at the moment. In the last year, I would say we've probably responded to, let's say 5 or 6 calls with new construction. You got gas lines and stuff. So we've had a couple gas exposures, and non-related to our fire hall, we have been part of a couple road incidents personally that we would obviously be getting called out for if this gets passed. And even if it doesn't get passed, we are planning to send an application to take in some highway exposure. So we would be responding to those MVAs on the highway. But yeah, for the exact question, call volume is not high at the moment.
And just to add some clarity to that, I'll jump in that the first responder and the highway rescue that the chief spoke about, that's kind of brand new, or it is brand new training that they've taken on and expanded services. So the present call volume is solely based on fires, whereas this proposed service is fire response, highway rescue, and medical response.
Hey, I've got a few other questions if I'm allowed.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Road rescue is currently covered by Kamloops to the east and Savona to the west. How does Tobiano slot into this?
I can take that if no one else wants it.
Yeah.
Sure, great. Great question, Greg. So the expansion of the area, if it was to go ahead, would be part of a defined fire service delivery area. So that piece of highway would now be under the jurisdiction of the TNRD service area. And that's how that works. So where Kamloops would respond now, or Savona, that would be then reviewed or looked at by emergency management as a fire service, a defined fire service area that the fire department has jurisdiction to respond within. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Another question I would have would be the BC Ambulance Service currently provides medical response to Tobiano and Cherry Creek. And their response times has been pretty good, 20, 25 minutes. So I'm just wondering, do we really need to provide medical service within this area through our fire department?
Okay, good question. So, and you're talking road rescue, medical, I think, like both road rescue and medical, I think, Greg, hey?
Yeah, medical, well, as it relates to the BC Ambulance Service, I mean,
Right.
For sure, and I'll take a stab at that one too, Greg. So looking at it, I guess even at the provincial lens, and we can drill down to the Tobiano area specifically, is that currently BC Emergency Health Services that has the BC Ambulance Service under that umbrella, and I think we've all seen this through the news, and I've definitely seen this through our fire departments. The responses aren't quite as adequate as people would like them, and that's, you know, I'm not pointing fingers or trying to create a dogfight out there at all, but the reality is, and if you've experienced great service through BCAS, that's great, but that isn't always the case across the board. And this isn't a service that's going to take place of the great work that the paramedics do. It's to augment the service so that patient care can be done, and they're not waiting 20 or 25 minutes or 40 minutes. Is the fire department can respond and create that urgent patient care immediately, and then triage the situation, and then when the paramedics come, they can do the changeover, and then that patient, essentially, for whatever the case is, that 911 call was created, is dealt with in a more effective manner overall.
Yay.
Does that help?
Okay, thanks for that, Jason, and thanks, Greg. And I'll just remind everyone to please feel free to put your hand up and keep going with the questions in the chat as well. Greg, if you have any more questions, feel free to keep your hand up. And I see some more hands up now and more coming into the chat. So we'll just kind of filter through and come back to you, Greg, and if
Okay.
you still have more. So thank you for your questions so far. There was one that came in from the chat a few minutes ago from somebody named BDM. What accounts for the variability in the tax burdens on that slide? Saying that it looks like the spread was 50 cents to $1.50. Yeah, you were right. I'll just go back to that for reference sake.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I can jump in and respond to that. So that's a very good question. Kind of
45, yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a complicated answer because each fire department, I mean, there's two factors here. One being the service area. So again, the tax rate is based on the total assessment or the total tax amount we need to collect divided by the total assessment. So an area that there could be a very small operating cost of a fire department, but if there's a much smaller number of properties and less assessment, then their rate is higher. And that's the case on the higher end of the scale. When you look at places like Little Fort in particular, it's quite a small service area, even though their operating budget is, I think they're about $100,000 a year in operating costs. They still have a high tax rate. The other thing to consider is the whether there's capital borrowing involved or not. I'll actually highlight on this slide. I forgot to mention earlier, Monty Creek is at the low end there, 55 cents. Now that's actually a new fire protection area, and the reason it's so low is because the fire hall is currently under construction. It'll be completed within a couple months, so that borrowing cost has not yet hit the taxpayer. So when they voted in the referendum 3 years ago to approve this, they approved, I believe it was 1.5 as the maximum tax requisition. So we anticipate that will go up significantly, as the public was expecting when they voted on in the referendum.
Okay. Thanks for that, Jamie. I have the internet at power of the internet at my fingers, and the referendum question was basically $1.10 as the maximum for Monty Creek. So there we go, and that was 3 years ago. Just for reference sake. Lots of questions coming in. This is great. And next in line with the hand up is Brent. So I've just asked you to unmute, Brent, and go ahead and unmute your mic and fire away.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I live up on Deer Drive, right at off of the end of the pavement. And the way the numbers are set up here are a little confusing. People get lost coming up this way all the time. How would that affect the, if there was first responder medical emergency up this way? How would you deal with that? And I guess the other part of it is part of our, like the road maintenance isn't all that great in the winter time. So if an ambulance was to come in the winter, is your vehicle capable of getting into an area like this? Thanks.
Thanks for the question, Brent. And I think that'd be Chief Friesen. Are you good to answer that?
Yeah, I could take that on. So obviously we realize in Cherry Creek, there are some difficult properties that we would have to get at with probably wouldn't be able to get fire engines up to some of these. We do have that smaller rescue truck, bush truck that is a 4-wheel drive. We could equip that with chains in the winter if needed to get into these areas. And you know, if as we go forwards, I would imagine that you know, we'll spend some time digging into apparatus needed to adequately service every property in the service area. So I think if yeah, as far as the road maintenance goes, I don't think I can respond to that. I think that would be part of either through TNRD or through highways potentially if they service that stuff. But as far as getting a piece of equipment up there, if this goes through, we will look at all necessary equipment needed to get to all the properties.
And I'll jump in and speak to the road maintenance piece quickly, just on that. I mean, actually, that's a really good question. And I first want to clarify that we're not replacing the ambulance service. It's just the idea that under this model, the firefighters would be dispatched and very, very likely arrive on scene before the ambulance is there. So the 4-wheel drive truck that the fire department would have, if there's a challenge in road conditions, we have a better chance of getting there with the 4-wheel drive truck than the ambulance. Yeah, so I'll just make that comment.
I'll also chime in and say that Ministry of Transportation in regional districts is responsible for the road maintenance. So we have a continuing dialogue with Ministry of Transportation where we are having difficulties. And in fact, I believe on tomorrow's agenda with the electoral area is Ministry of Transportation reporting on road conditions in the TNRD. So this is certainly something that we would be taking up if Chief Friesen finds that he's having difficulty deploying his crew and equipment. That would be a subject that we would want to hit pretty hard with Ministry of Transportation, and they're very responsive. We've had some good dialogue on that, and that's part of the process.
Okay. Thanks everyone for the response, and yeah, good point of clarity. And it's a common misconception that who does roads, and it's in the TNRD. The answer is always the province, and the TNRD doesn't actually do roads, and we don't collect any tax for road maintenance. It's fully through the province, and there's so many maintenance providers because of how vast the TNRD is. But Cherry Creek is looked after by Argo. It's in what's called Service Area 15. So Argo Road Maintenance is right now the maintenance contract provider, if that's worth knowing as well. Thank you again, Brent, for the question. I see your hands down. Feel free to put it back up if you had any more, but I'll move on to the next hand up, which was Chandra. So Chandra, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, it's her husband, Dean. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, we're residents of Tobiano, and we've been here before 2018, so we've been following this whole scenario the whole way through. At the end, I'll just tell you how I feel about a bit of this, and just somebody's comments. Maybe they can help me out with this. Right now, as I understand, Tobiano doesn't require a water tender or water tanks, and I don't think we require a new fire engine either yet, but I may be wrong on that. Our assessed values are almost double of that of Cherry Creek, and pretty much all the development's going to happen in Tobiano, not Cherry Creek. So the way I'm looking at this, Tobiano is going to heavily subsidize Cherry Creek in this scenario. And I'm not saying I'm against this, but can somebody please explain to me what the benefit for Tobiano is in this situation?
Okay,
Yeah, I
thank you,
could
Chandra.
take
Go ahead,
that
Jamie.
one. Colton, yeah, very good question. So benefit from Tobiano is the fact that, I appreciate your comment. There's more assessment and higher assessed homes in Tobiano. However, the cost of operating currently are only the properties in Tobiano. So the idea is, from the Tobiano perspective, that there's more properties in the Cherry Creek area, or there's additional properties that are going to contribute to those total costs. So the actual operating costs are not significantly increased by the expanded area. There still needs to be a fire hall that still has not been built for Tobiano. So we're looking at this idea of, why not build one to service the entire community instead of just a portion of the community. There's always going to be operational costs that are different between kind of the two communities. Like you said, you are correct that we don't need a tender to service Tobiano because there's fire hydrants there. But on the flip side, there's costs associated with servicing Tobiano that aren't required in Cherry Creek. So, for example, part of the operating budget funds water access fees through the private utility in Tobiano that guarantees that water system is maintained to provide fire protection service. So I'll say it pretty directly. It's a bit of a give and take thing. The concept, the model that everyone, both Tobiano and Cherry Creek residents, are voting on is this idea of the greater good, a larger fire protection area, shared service across both communities, or the whole Cherry Creek corridor, which includes Tobiano, to have that better service.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think
I would
Yeah.
just chime in that the concept, this is a TNRD fire department, and the TNRD is looking to provide the greatest service levels it can for the residents of the area. And this is really about inclusion, not exclusion. I think if we talk about neighbors as opposed to communities, we get a better sense. If something is happening to your neighbor, of course you would want to go help them. And you wouldn't say, oh, you're a neighbor from Tobiano, or you're a neighbor from Cherry Creek, or you're not a neighbor yet, but you're moving into Tobiano. We're going to try to help people where we can help them, when we can help them. And I think that that's the spirit of what's going on here. Everybody's paying the same rate per thousand, $1.14 per thousand, whether you're at Tobiano or Cherry Creek. It just so happens that there is assessed value in Tobiano currently that would be about 71% of the cost, and 29% of the cost would be carried by Cherry Creek people. But again, look at it as your neighbor, and you're looking at it as a broad inclusion as is viable. And I think that the men and women at TNRD have done a wonderful job bringing that cost into alignment with other service areas. And I think that's what I'll say about that.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Mike. And thanks for the good question, Chandra. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? I see the hands down. Okay. Feel free to throw your hand back up and we can put you back in the queue if you had anything else. So thanks again for that. Next question was in the chat from Pete about for a home in Cherry Creek off the main highway, if we or a neighbor reports a fire involving a house, what could volunteer fire department possibly save? Even an 8-minute response time on a good day, would that be likely the house would be engulfed, wouldn't it? Pointing out that I believe trying to say Pete's been a resident for 31 years without fire protection and wondering what the benefit would be now. The other part of the question being on a snowy day, wouldn't response time be longer? I think we might have touched on that a bit already, but could go back to that. Chief, would this be for you about the response time and if a call came in involving a report of a neighbor's house on fire?
Yeah, I mean, we're not living at the fire hall, so yeah, our response time's not going to be a 1 minute out the door. But the thing with fire service in our the way we're set up is you're going to have a service show up at your house or your neighbor's house. If a building is fully engulfed, I mean, what we'll do is we would strike that and we would protect the surrounding properties and surrounding buildings and try to keep as many structures protected as possible. Will we always strike every fire and save everything? Probably not, but we would do everything we could to save the surrounding areas. And then also regarding the winter, of course, travel time would be a little slower as we'd want our crews to show up safely, but no doubt we would still show up and do everything we could to save anything around the buildings.
Okay, thank you for that, Chief. And thank you for the question, Pete, as well. Next hand up was Carrie when I look at the chat and the hands up. So Carrie, feel free to go ahead and unmute your mic and go ahead with your question. Should be prompting you to unmute there, Carrie. There you go.
Am I unmuted?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, just a comment to make. I do live in Tobiano and understand that people are concerned about extra costs. I would just like to make a comment in this time with winds, which it does get windy in this valley. I think that fire protection as a community is really important and that it would not take long. So if Cherry Creek doesn't have fire support, it doesn't take very long in the big picture for a fire to get to Tobiano.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Carrie. There was a question from Gord in the chat. Did you have anything else, Carrie? I see your hand stop. I see you've muted there. So, okay, we'll move on. And so Gord asks, can you explain the reserve fund and how Tobiano has been contributing that to the for the past 7 years, and further, how much time? How much is in the reserve fund at this time? Jamie, would you have that info handy?
I sort of have it handy, and I'll just lean on Jason to stop me if I have anything incorrect. So what we did in Tobiano was when we bought the truck that's currently in use, that was bought just through internal borrowing through the TNRD, through funds that the TNRD already had, and the reserve funds actually weren't being significantly built up. The majority of contributions that would typically go to reserve were going down to pay down that fire truck. The fire truck is fully paid off right now. I don't have the number on the reserve fund. I know that reserve fund was just recently used to purchase that bush truck that Chief Friesen spoke about. So I don't have the number at my fingertips, but I know it's fairly minimal because of those expenses that we've incurred. But I think related to that, and I'll just make sure to bring it up because some people may be thinking about it, it is correct that all the contributions that Tobiano has made towards the existing fire department and those apparatuses, the trucks that are currently owned by Tobiano would be transferred to this new expanded service area that would include both Tobiano and Cherry Creek. Jason, do you have anything to add or clarify?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Should we do you think tomorrow we'd worthwhile to, would we be able, I mean, to get the reserve number and put something on the webpage, do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I can get those detailed financial statements. They're just not at my fingertips at the moment.
Yep. Okay. So look for that as well, Gord. I suspect sometime tomorrow we'd be able to get that on the, during the day on the referendum web page as well. Couple hands up here. Greg has had the hand up waiting for a while. So Greg, you should be able to unmute now, and please go ahead.
I am just wondering about response time to Tobiano from the new hall. Is there an anticipated increase?
Yeah, I'll take
Chief.
that one. My gut feeling is that our response time to any calls in Tobiano would actually be a faster response time, primarily due to the fact that almost half of our department comes from Cherry Creek already. So we would be responding from Cherry Creek to Tobiano, all geared up in that truck already. There has been talks potentially about having a second location with another truck at it. So our resident firefighters from Tobiano would respond to that truck, and our Cherry Creek firefighters would respond with a Cherry Creek apparatus. So I really believe that our response to